Hello and welcome to episode 5 of From the Vault, brought to you by Murphy's Vault. This week I've got Riley with me.
Hello.
And Nathaniel.
Hello.
This week's episode is brought to you from a cottage between Dunbar and North Berwick because...
The exciting locales. The exotic mystiques.
Mr. Holt-House is getting married today, which is all really, really exciting.
And we thought, why not do something special for him and record a podcast?
Well, actually, all the stuff's not happening until this afternoon, so we had some time to burn this morning. And last week's episode had some technical issues, so we're re-recording. Also, the difference between last week and this week is that we actually have the full Dominaria spoiler.
We do.
So that's exciting because I've been wanting to talk about that for a few weeks, and I don't like not having the full picture.
It's hard to talk about a set if you haven't seen the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this card could be really good, unless they print something that makes it bad.
And new cards are great.
New cards
talk about them.
Always great.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously context is important, limited and constructed. So yeah, it's really good that we've got the whole thing. So rather than going through the whole spoiler, because that's really, really boring, we've picked out a couple of cards, each of us, that we find quite interesting. So we're kind of going to go into them. This week we're doing a bit of standard, quite a bit of limited as well. We've got Riley here to cover that, which is really good. But yeah, Nathaniel, why don't you kick us off with your cards that you've picked for the episode?
Okay, so there's like two cards that I think of. Well, there's one card I think will be very impactful in standard. Some cards I think won't be impactful but look impactful. Mm-hmm. One card that I think will be very impactful in vintage, which we won't discuss that much, but I just want to
cover that. Yeah.
Yeah, and one card that I have no idea if it will be good, but it has a lot of text, all of which looks strong.
Right.
The card I think will be impactful in standard is Khan. Mm-hmm. I feel like opinion is quite split on this card right now. Should we say card text when we start talking about cards?
Yeah, it will be quite good because for anyone that's not been paying attention,
So Khan is a 4-mana planeswalker.
I should mention he's colorless.
Yeah, he's totally generic. Any color can play him. Mm-hmm.
5 loyalty.
It comes in at 5 loyalty. Optics for +1. Reveal top 2 cards of your library. An opponent chooses one, puts it into your hand. The other one goes into exile with a silver counter on it. -1, put target card from exile with a silver counter on it into your hand. And he -2s to make a star construct token that is an artifact, which has power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control.
It's got the new templating where it's like a 0/0 and +1/+1 for each. But
okay.
You're right.
It's something like that.
It's not important.
It's as big as the number of artifacts you have. Mm-hmm. People are talking about Khan in lots of different places. I'm not sure where he shows up in Eternal formats. We're all talking about him in Affinity, which I'm not totally sure about, but I could see maybe. It's really hard to say with Affinity. It plays lots of very odd cards in its sideboard, and it really depends on what it needs. Mm-hmm. And people talk about it in Stompy Shells in Legacy. I think that I think having a colorless card advantage engine in these sorts of colorless decks, like Eldrazi, for example, or the Steel Stompy list that's been doing a few rounds in Legacy, is quite a powerful option. But I don't really feel confident enough with those decks to be like, yes, Karn will go here. So I don't really want to discuss them too much.
Yeah, it gets really weird thinking about things in the context of Ancient Tomb and City of Traitors as well.
Yeah,
and, I don't know.
I think the place you can start from is Coercer Portal.
Yeah.
So for those legacy formats, Coercer Portal from Conspiracy is legal. Where it's a 4-mana artifact. It has Will of the Council, which means at the beginning of your upkeep, each player votes either for you to draw a card or for all non-land permanents to be destroyed. Right. And if the vote is tied, you draw a card. So basically, it's personal Howling Mine. You're going to draw a card every turn in 1v1. Mm-hmm. That card sees no play in any constructed format. Mm-hmm. So Karn, the combination of his first 2 abilities are kind of similar to Coercive Portal. It's a bit different, obviously, and it's maybe the +1's a bit worse because the opponent gets a choice of which card to give you, but then it also means that they have these cards they have to play around, so maybe it puts them into awkward positions or whatever. Yeah. You can argue either way on that. I think the +2 roughly even out to drawing a card. The first 2 abilities roughly even out to drawing a card every turn. So then you get to the final ability, which is that he can make these creature tokens.
Yes, and that's the important distinction between that and
that's for sure.
I think there is another important distinction. Is that Coercive Portal is an artifact, which all these Stompy decks already play a lot of artifacts. So post-board, people bring in all of their Ancient Grudges and their Smash the Smithereens and their Abrades. Whereas Khan, you can't blow it up with artifact relation. So it's not as soft to Kurligan's Command or Ancient Grudge or these sorts of things. I do think that is an impact.
I agree. I think for Eternal formats, the Planeswalker type is better because Planeswalkers are generally harder to remove in Eternal formats. Their boards states tend to be smaller. There's more artifact destruction than there is in maybe Standard or so. I think with Standard, actually, like, if you just wanted that Coercive Portal effect, I think Coercive Portal itself will be better. Like an artifact, an artifact
that makes
or
sense.
Enchantment will be better.
And that's based on the types and the answers.
Enchantment definitely would be better because of a braid in Standard right now, but I do mostly agree. But saying we didn't want to discuss him in Legacy, I do think that there is a place for him potentially, although people have talked about him in Ensnaring Bridge shells, which I'm not as excited for because I don't really see the point of making...
When you want Coercive Portal in your Ensnaring Bridge deck.
Yeah, that seems not very good.
Chandra also creatures that can't attack.
Chandra already pairs much better with those decks anyway, and they're all already playing red. But in Standard, I think he is potentially very impactful because having a colorless Coercive Portal effect can be a very powerful sideboard option for lots of decks that want to pivot and want to become... I just want to have this option post-forward.
It's like a Life Crafter's Bestiary. It's like this type you can diversify your board presence with that makes it hard for the reactive deck to deal with all your options.
I think it gives a lot of decks that don't have that because a lot of the Planeswalkers in Standard right now aren't very good. We were looking at this and there's Chandra who's great. There's Teferi coming out who's very clearly very strong, and then there's
Liliana seeing some play.
Liliana seeing some play in blue-black decks. But most of the rest of them aren't really that good, and they're not very good at diversifying your board presence in a strong fashion.
Yeah, especially after we've come off the back of formats dominated by Gideon Allies and Zendikar.
Yeah, or Nixilus Reignited, or these very powerful planeswalkers that gave you a second avenue of attack against control decks, for example. Whereas right now, I don't really feel like those planeswalkers exist to some degree, unless they're called Chandra or Torture Defiance. So Khan giving everyone this option is, I think, going to be quite impactful for how people build Standard sideboards for the future. But I also think he's impactful for... Again, we're going to talk a bit about decks, I think, a bit later, but I think he's one of the most impactful cards for Mardu vehicles in a very long time.
Okay.
And he is potentially totally transformative of that archetype.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. He plays with Heart of Kieran, obviously being able to crit, and also plays with all the artifacts, pumping
he plays the best
tokens that
yeah. He plays the best with Heart of Kieran since Gideon Allies Zendikar, I would argue. And I think he is going to be massively impactful in that archetype.
Sounds good.
So I'm excited for him in that regard because I've been playing Heart of Kieran for a while and that card's real strong. It's just been a shame that the mana base has been so bad for the past
actually think that we're going to talk about Standard impressions later. Obviously, we're just going through cards at the moment, but I've spoken to you about this before, but I'm just thinking about it now with Mardu Vehicles and things like Cast Down coming in, which we'll talk about. But it's... Yeah, I mean, the fact that Heart of Kieran is legendary is actually quite relevant.
I have some thoughts on that, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So those are kind of my initial thoughts on Khan. I think that me and Alex have actually discussed this quite a bit. Or should I call you Riley? But basically, we think you have to get something out of his -2.
Okay.
So you can't just be making 1/1s. You have to be making 2/2s or 3/3s with that ability for him to be a main deck inclusion. But once you are, he looks quite strong.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The place I came from, and it may be kind of naive, but I think that Wizards have learned from Smuggler's Copter and wouldn't so quickly let themselves print something that's so powerful for a colorless card without having made it effectively not colorless. And the fact that Karn cares about the artifacts, I think, makes him kind of not colorless because then he goes into any artifact deck, but you still have to be an artifact deck to actually want to play him in your main deck.
Absolutely, as opposed to Smuggler's Copter, which had no deck building restriction to it.
You have to play 1-power creatures.
It may be naive to just assume that, but I think from what I can see of him, basically part of my reasoning was comes from the fact that I don't think that most decks at the moment would play a Coercive Portal. They might sideboard it, like we've talked about.
Yeah.
But I think there's very few decks are going to be jamming a bunch of those in their main deck because that's just not what Standard is about at the moment. It's about playing to the battlefield, and for Karn to play to the battlefield, you need to be getting a sizable creature out of his -2.
That makes sense to me, absolutely.
So then, the cards that I think are going to be less impactful than they look is every single card that has the type line Legendary Sorcery.
Right.
So
You're really low on these.
All these cards look so strong, but I could be maybe talked around about the black one. But like, so here's my thought process. All of them are very, very strong, right? All of them do something very impactful. But all of them require a legendary creature or planeswalker in play.
Right.
Most of those... So most of the legendary creatures in Standard right now come in two varieties. They're either like Karizev.
Okay.
So they're kind of low cost, but kind of low impact, but also like quite fragile. And the kind of thing where, you play a Karizev turn 2, it's not unlikely your opponent untaps, kills it, passes the turn back to you. And they're in the sort of situation where I don't really want to rely on that to be able to just even cast the powerful card I've put in my deck. Or they come in the form of the Scarab God or Hazoret.
Which...
And both of those cards, why am I putting cards in my deck that I can only cast when I have them in play?
Right.
Because, like...
I mean, there's nothing more win more than that, right?
I've got my like busted god that's really hard to get rid of, that in the case of the Scarab God, and sort of in the case of Hazoret, gives me something to do with my mana. Why do I need expensive, powerful cards at that point?
Right.
So I think a lot of them, I look at them and I go, but what am I playing? Like, people are talking about playing a Via.
Yeah, I was going to say, people are talking about playing a Via
People are talking about playing Baral, and I'm like, but these cards aren't good.
Yeah.
And I just don't see these legendary sorceries as being powerful enough that you're willing to, like, sacrifice your deck's consistency to play bad legendary creatures.
I mean, I do largely agree with you, but to put the other argument across, the other reason to play the cheap creatures is Mox Amber.
So that's true, and that leads into me... I'm still totally unconvinced on Mox Amber.
I am the same, but it is definitely a powerful effect.
Yes.
Like every Moxen they've printed has seen play.
That's true. But I think that, like, Mox Amber to me reads like a really bad Chrome Mox. In that, like, you have to have another card to go with it. So theoretically you do get use of that card, but if that card is a Via Pashiri, you're not really getting that much use of the card. Yeah, it's not totally unplayable, it still does something, but it's not that good. If it was a good card, it would already be played.
This is the thing as well, and like people are talking about playing multiples of, we were talking about the Barals, we were talking about the Vias, and I think in many ways they're forgetting that these are legendary creatures, and if you draw multiple of them, not only are you drawing multiple of what we've established as a pretty bad card, you're also not able to play out these cards.
Yeah.
And if you're not drawing your legendary sorceries, you're not hitting the mana requirement in order to cast them, then you end up not doing a whole lot. You mentioned the black legendary sorcery, so take us through that one.
So that one... So basically, my thoughts on this are twofold. One...
Well, the card is Yawgmoth's Vile Offering.
Yeah, Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. Sorry, 4 and a black... Sorcery. Is it destroy target creature or
destroy up to one target creature or planeswalker?
Yeah.
Then return up to one target creature or planeswalker from a graveyard to the battlefield under your control.
Yeah. So that's pretty insane, considering that, like, looking at previous sets, we've had like 5 mana Rise from the Grave effects, which is like 4 and a black, return target creature from a graveyard to play, and like getting both a murder, or I guess getting both a hero's downfall and a Rise from the Grave that can also hit planeswalkers on the Rise side is like clearly very impactful.
Yeah.
I think it's probably the strongest of the legendary sorceries on its face. Yeah. And so obviously that is the one I'm most interested in going out of my way to play. Black doesn't have that many good legendary creatures except for the Scarab God, which I'm not excited on playing them with because
it has Gonti as well.
That's what I'm getting to. Because Gonti is very... Like, Gonti's in this weird space where if you play Karizev, your opponent wants to kill it.
Yeah.
Because you're an aggressive red deck, it's a good aggressive creature that's hard to block, your opponent is incentivized to untap and kill that creature. If you play Gonti, your opponent doesn't really want to kill Gonti.
Yeah.
Like... You untap, and you've played a Gonti, and you've got a card out of them, and they don't really want to trade 1 for 1. Yeah. Like, Gonti always trades 2 for 1.
Also, just as an aside on that, if you have another Gonti in your hand that you can't cast until this Gonti's dead, or unless you want to, lose value there, then people are naturally disincentivized because of the legendary subtype.
The fact that people are playing Liliana Death's Majesty, which is another card that tends to stick around on battlefield, but also satisfies itself as a sorcery, but slightly more powerful than Gonti in the way it's impacted the board state as it when it first comes into play. Gonti basically fulfills all the things I'm looking for in a card that I would want to play with a legendary sorcery, which is a legendary creature that I'm happy to play because it's good.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to play in multiples because a lot of why you're playing Gonti is the enters the battlefield ability, really. I mean, the fact that you go 2/3 Death Touch is also impactful, but Basically, it's a card that disincentivizes at killing it. Every other legendary creature in standard at the moment that sees play, you're incentivized to kill because it's high impact.
Yeah.
Gaunty, you like just slows the game down, and just makes people be like, okay, I don't really want to attack into Gaunty and give them value. I'm going to wait until I like find a board sweeper or find some way of like getting around it. And you're like, okay, well in that time,
I'm going to Yawgmoth
kill your thing, reanimate my Liliana. -3 Liliana, reanimate Scarab God. You lose the game.
You're done.
It's over.
Hit the bricks, pal.
So that's kind of where I am on those. Is I'm still very down on most things that say you have to have a legendary creature or planeswalker in play for this thing to do something. But the black one is very strong.
Yeah.
And Gaunty is in this weird spot where he kind of satisfies all the things you want out of that card.
That makes sense to me.
I'll also say that I'm very ready to lose to Jaya's Immolating Inferno a lot in Limited.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of legendary creatures. They've collated the packs in such a way it's going to be literally at least one in every pack.
Yeah.
Every colour, I think, has 2 or 3 at uncommon.
Yeah.
And then you obviously can't reveal your creature's opponents in Limited. And the Jaya's Immolating Inferno, red, X, legendary sorcery, deal X to each of up to 3 targets.
Oh, God.
It's just going to be so hard to beat.
Yeah, no.
Like, anytime your opponent casts that against you, you're just almost certainly going to lose the game.
Is it a rare?
Yes.
Oh, God. Okay, well, we'll get to Limited in a minute. What's your last card, Nathaniel?
Oh, so I have 2 cards. I'm just going to briefly mention
sure.
that if any card is going to get Mishra's Workshop restricted in Vintage, I believe it will be Weatherlight. Because I believe that Weatherlight is incredibly impactful for the Workshop's archetype and solves all of its problems.
It's a 4-mana vehicle, legendary artifact vehicle, crew-free, 4/5 flyer. When it deals combat damage to a player, you get to look at the top 5 cards of your library and reveal a historic card. So historic is artifact, legend, or saga. Key part being artifact here for the Workshop's deck. This card is busted if it only costs 2 mana.
Yeah.
And Workshop's big problem in Vintage is that it lacks good card selection or card advantage. And this card kind of does those things really well, while also forwarding your main game plan, because it's an aggro deck now. It plays 4 Chief of the Foundry, or Foundry Inspector.
Foundry Inspector and some number of Chief of the Foundry.
That's it. It plays 4 Foundry Inspector, 4 Outbound Ravager, 4 Walking Ballistas, like
Steel Overseers.
As well, yeah. All these sorts of cards that aim to just like it wants to put up. It's basically Affinity for Vintage now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it plays busted cards because
it plays Moxen, and like it's able to throw up its hand in a way that
having access to these card advantage. This card advantage engine, I think, is going to be hugely impactful for the archetype. And if anything gets Workshops restricted in Vintage, I think it might be this card. But we have already gone pretty far down the rabbit hole of restricting really bad artifacts.
So that we don't have to restrict Mishra's Workshop. And,
Vintage is a very strange place.
Yeah, so it is a super strange place.
It's hard to predict things. But the last card I want to talk about is Ariel...
Knight of Windgrace.
That's it, Knight of Windgrace. It's 2 white blacks, so 4 mana, for a 4/4 Vigilance with...
It's a legendary creature.
Yeah, it's a legendary creature.
And it's a knight.
It's a knight, yeah. 2 and a white and tap. Make a 2/2 Vigilant Knight. Black tap X untapped knights you control. Destroy target creature with power X or less. I think that this card I'm not sure about, because in the world of Glorybringers, your 4-mana 4/4s that don't do anything when they enter the battlefield are not really exciting.
Yeah.
But if you do get to untap with this card, I think it has... Okay, so it's not quite as big of a board impact as the Scarab God. Nothing is. But I don't think it's too dissimilar in terms of its effects in like an aggressive archetype.
Sure.
You specify an aggressive archetype, yes.
Yeah.
I think the problem with this card is that you need to have board presence for it to already be particularly powerful. The unique thing about Scarab God is board can just be the Scarab God, and if you untap with it, you're still a favourite to win the game.
Yeah,
so quickly just takes over the game. Whereas this card is very slow to take over the game if it's the only thing you have going.
You want to be curving into it kind of thing with other knights, essentially.
Like I'm really excited to play...
Benalia.
Yeah, I'm really excited to play History of Benalia into Ariel, because suddenly I have a bunch of knights, I can kill your things, and all my knights have vigilance, so I can attack and kill your things in the same turn. I can do it before you get to declare blockers. The card seems like it has a lot of potential for like aggressive white-black archetypes, but if Glorybringer is the thing to be doing, then I'm not sure how excited I am to tap out on turn 4 for like 4/4s.
Yeah, that makes sense. just a quick one. History of Benalia isn't a card that we want to cover in depth because it seems to be that everybody is covering it. It is definitely one of the most pushed cards in the set, but it's a mythic rare, which is 1 white. It's a saga. So as it enters the battlefield, you get a 2/2 knight with vigilance, knight token.
Yeah.
On your next, is it draw step?
Main phase. So it says after your draw step.
Yeah.
So what that means is beginning of your pre-combat main phase.
So the beginning of the next pre-combat main phase, you get another 2/2 knight token with vigilance, and then on the next one after that, knights you control get +2/+1 until end of turn.
Yes.
And I think they get first strike as well.
No, I think it's just +2.
It's just +2/+1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So
And
that's
then
pretty...
it goes away.
Yeah, it's like a kind of very similar to Gideon Ally of Zendikar, and people keep saying Nathaniel was saying it's the Grim Flayer of the set because it's a mythic, pretty much pure.
Why is it a mythic? I thought the Armageddon one would be.
Oh yeah, it doesn't like all the sagas are very weird to me on their rarity placements.
It's weird, but so that's back to Ariel and Knight Tribal and all that kind of stuff. We want a board state. We want to be able to untap and potentially use the removal mode as well as the create a knight mode, depending on what's going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I like I was saying, I agree with Alex. It's not as impactful, but
Alex, what cards have you picked out? Have we mainly got limited stuff?
I mainly have some limited stuff that we'll talk about later. But for constructed, the cards I'm interested in testing with the most are Karn because I'm unsure about him.
Yep.
And then the other one, we talked about Karn, so we'll move on from that. The other card I really want it to be good is Lich's Mastery.
Lich's Mastery. Yeah.
It's 3 triple black for a legendary enchantment. It has hexproof. It says you can't lose the game.
That's good.
And then says whenever you are dealt damage, exile a permanent from the battlefield, a card from your hand, or a card from your graveyard.
Right.
For each damage you were dealt.
Yep.
So if you take 5, you have to remove 5 cards from your graveyard. It's when you're going to start, so on. And it then says, whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. And the final line of text on it is, when Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So the idea is, it turns your life total into the total number of cards you have drawn this game. Mm-hmm. Because every card you've drawn is either going to be on the battlefield, it's going to be in your hand, or it's going to be in your graveyard, pretty much. Some small amount of stuff can be exiled, but it largely makes it that.
Yeah.
And then all future life gain just draws you more cards into that pool. So all the cards you've drawn from your deck. And I think this card, it's either going to be unplayable, which is probably most likely, or it's going to be insanely busted and unbeatable for some things. But it just looks incredibly cool and interesting.
Yeah, the design is phenomenal. Like
I really want to play it with Approach, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can play it with like some sort of like Masterminds acquisition or something like that, so you can have like a variety of things going on.
This is so much mana for all these
It's probably just some like incredibly dirtily, almost creatureless black X control deck, and that kind of thing is always like exciting to me whenever it's available, even if it's not necessarily good.
It sounds like potentially really strong in control mirrors. Like, it just busts those wide open. Because how do you possibly keep up?
I mean, the problem is, like, gaining... Like, resolving a 6-mana sorcery speed spell is, like, the big cost to it in the control mirror. If you're playing against counter magic or whatever, you need to have, like, a bunch of duresses available you in the same turn.
This makes cards like Moment of Craving, like, super scary, in my opinion. Like, Moment of Craving, kill your creature, draw 2 cards. That's bonkers good.
Yeah. It makes, like, lifelink creatures great. Like Gifted Deeperborn or something like this. Like, every time your Gifted Deeperborn gets into combat, you're going to draw 2 cards. That's...
Yeah, and you're going to remove that creature because he's Gifted Deeperborn has death.
All of this sounds excellent and like things I want to be doing.
That's it. And you mentioned creatureless, and in my head I'm thinking, well, obviously there's lifelink creatures, and I'm glad you touched on that. The card's really exciting. I think that the design is phenomenal, and like Richard Garfield was actually involved in...
Yeah, the original... The card hasn't changed a lot since the original one Richard Garfield submitted for this set, but he basically said, like in the notes they have for that card, he's like, yeah, I created this card because I was always kind of disappointed with how little play Lich saw.
Right.
Maybe you've already made a card like this, I'm not sure, but if you haven't, here you go. I think that's just like great. It's like, it reads like a very old Magic card where it's like super flavorful, but also has like this very weird effect on the game mechanics.
Absolutely.
It just makes the game play out differently.
That's it. And like those enchantments, they used to be called like world enchantments or something like that. And this kind of card is very reminiscent of those because it just totally changes the way that the game is functioning for yourself, obviously, and just
for your opponent, because suddenly their goal changes in a way.
Yeah.
Because a lot of conventional ways of killing you are like not good enough anymore.
Absolutely.
But removing this seems really hard. I mean, I guess they still just have to kill you by like dealing damage, but it seems like suddenly it's way harder Yeah.
No, it's really tough.
No.
But it's like very interesting. It makes things like Scavenger Ground suddenly like excellent against your deck. Because presumably in this deck you're looking to stock a graveyard because it's essentially life points. So maybe you have some number of self-mill because all your self-mill is effectively extra life gain. But then if your opponent Scavenger Grounds you, they've suddenly like dealt you 10.
Yeah, that's really, really...
Like that just creates these like interesting like changes in how the game plays out.
That's really, really interesting.
I am really interested in... This seems like the kind of card that I look at and go, that's really cool. I should play a deck with that in it. And then I just play like the aggro deck anyway. Because I just like want to make people dead.
How about this History of Benalia card?
Yeah, I don't want to like durdle with 6 mana enchantments. I always play these decks and look at the 6 mana enchantments and I'm like, I know you're good, but... Why isn't opponent dead now?
I'll let Riley break the card. If we got a good deck.
Other people play this busted card and I'll just play the aggro decks.
Sure.
What are you excited for, Dan?
What am I excited for? So, unsurprisingly, quite a lot of green and white things. But a lot of people are talking about these decks. I think this is actually... I mean, I'll pick out the cards and it's a good transition into our kind of standard first impressions section. Because a couple of the cards sort of could fit into the same deck. The first card I want to talk about, based on how weird it is and how interesting it is Song of Freyalise. So Song of Freyalise is 1 and a green for a saga. And as it enters the battlefield, it gives you, it's reminiscent of Cryptolith, right? Which is that all of your creatures can tap for 1 mana of any colour. On the second turn, it's the same effect, so both 1 and 2 are the same, which allows you to, on turn 1, on the first turn, play out some more creatures, and then on the second turn, you've got a lot of creatures, you can make a lot of mana. And the third triggered ability is that creatures you control get Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible, and +1/+1 until end of turn.
They get a +1/+1 counter.
+1/+1 counter, that's it, not until end of turn. Big thing. So it's kind of this mini overrun effect.
The keywords are until end of turn, the counter, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, the keywords are until end of turn, the counter is obviously permanent. This card's really interesting to me. There's a lot of other cards that they've kind of brought along to kind of support it. Primary amongst them is Sapling Migration, which is 1 and a green to make 2 1/1 green saplings, and you can kick it for 3? 4. So 6 mana total to make 4 saplings, is that right?
Yes.
I'm not sure, wasn't sure.
That's the kind of card that is really interesting for these sorts of decks.
Yes.
Because you play it on turn 2 and you're not unhappy because your game plan is make a lot of creatures for my Song of Freyalise to be good. But then it's also sort of a mana sink later on in the game.
For your Song of Freyalise turns when they're on its Crypt Life mode.
Yeah. So this card is really difficult to evaluate, I feel, and that's kind of why I've picked it. I think that it could be extremely, extremely powerful. It could also be not very good. It's really hard to get a read on that as it stands.
It feels like a kind of card that's going to play out either excellently or terribly in your games. As well, so it might just it'll even vary from game to game or matchup to matchup. There'll be some matchups like the creature, like your mirrors or whatever, where it's the best thing you can have. Yeah, because they're not disrupting your board state or whatever, and you just get to go off and just develop incredibly faster than they do. And then you play against a controlling deck that's looking to clear your board, and it's just blank cardboard.
Yeah, and if you're behind on board, or if you're just, as you say, you just don't have any creatures on board.
Even if you're behind on board, as long as you're not imminently dying.
Sure.
Because it allows you to it does generate a lot of mana. Yeah. And that can pull you back into the game.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'm thinking about these situations where, you're having to deal with a board state and you're maybe in some kind of top deck mode, depending on what card draw spells we're also playing in this hypothetical deck, and you draw this card and you're thinking, this is precisely what I do not want in this moment. The overrun effect is all just really, really interesting based on these cards as well as cards that already exist, such as Shram's Expertise from Aether Revolt. And, if we really want to go hard, we can play things like Servo Exhibition. But the overrun effect, to me, if we're managing to stack multiple Songs of Freyalise, because it's worth noting that the sagas themselves aren't actually legendary and you can have 2 of them in play at once. So if you've got back-to-back turns where the overruns are triggering, not on the same one, but you trigger the overrun on one turn, all your whole board gets bigger, it all gets indestructible, you go all in, and because they've got vigilance, you're not like getting cracked back. You're just attacking with everything.
And because if you have a second Song of Freyalise in play, they all tap for mana.
Yes.
So after post-combat, you tap all, then play out the rest of your stuff.
And then you play out more stuff. Obviously, the card, I think we need some kind of card draw in this thing. There's nothing like an Evo Leap kind of effect, which I'd really like to see, and I think that would really push this kind of archetype super, super hard.
The name of that Dustwatch Recruiter.
Yes.
That was the guy who really
That's it.
kept the Coalition Company decks together.
And the Cryptoth Right decks. But basically, having back-to-back overrun turns seems very, very busted in these creature-based mirrors, as Riley touched on. But yeah, there's a lot of concerns around the card when we're behind or we're playing against the wrong kind of deck.
I think it's interesting to look at compared to Cryptolith Right, because Cryptolith Right existed in a different standard environment, and the best thing to do with Cryptolith Right was Collected Company, because that gave you 2 bodies, and the bodies are pretty good, and Cryptolith Right didn't buff your guys, it just made them tap for mana, so people were doing a bunch of like weird stuff and kind of combo-y stuff, and Ataka and Eldrazi Displacer and like weird stuff. There's also a lot more mana sinks, I think, which made Cryptolith Right a bit better. And it's also obviously you can play Cryptolith Right on turn 2 and set up later if you have nothing else to do. Sure. You don't really want to, but you can. You can't really play Song of Freyalise on turn 2. It's just not going to do anything at that point. Whereas the enablers we have for it now, the things that make multiple creatures, are like you say, are like Sram's Expertise, Servo Exhibition, Sapling Migration. There's 4 mana, make 3 Saplings at instant speed. It's called something. There's all these cards that make a lot of tokens, which pushes you in a slightly different direction. You're not like a value deck that has like a weird combo finish. You're a token deck, and your finish is provided by the Song of Freyalise. I think so. You were talking about a card draw engine. I think that these sorts of decks are the exact kind of deck that Driven to Despair has been looking for.
Yes.
I think that card is really potentially impactful for this archetype.
So for anyone because Driven to Despair is obviously a bit of an odd Amonkhet block card. So it's got Aftermath. Do you remember the...
Yeah, so it's 1 and a green for a sorcery on the front half, which is creatures you control get trample until end of turn, and until end of turn, whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And then the back half, which you can cast from the graveyard, is 1 and a black. Creatures you control get Menace.
Also a sorcery.
Yeah, creatures you control get Menace, and whenever they deal combat damage to a player, that player discards a card until end of turn. So, to me, Song of Freyalise, all the sagas want you to like have a play pattern where you build towards a big impactful turn that swings the game.
Absolutely, and because the mana investment is only 2 on that first turn, that overrun you're getting is totally free. So, we're talking about spending 4 mana on this individual card, and that's totally feasible because, you're not actually spending any mana on the overrun itself.
Yeah.
Or you just spend 2 mana and then draw a bunch of cards, and then your second main phase after your Vigilant Creatures, and then you tap. Oh, I guess you don't tap for mana at that point, unless
you only go second songs, which is like...
But you can draw your cards and then... and board more.
And the mana is, for these kinds of decks, like, I don't know, I'm about to talk about a different card, and I don't know if this deck could be Abzan-based, or green-black-based, or green-white, but I think that engine that you've just described is quite exciting and something that I really want to be trying out. So the next card I want to talk about is Shellai, Voice of Plenty, which is 3 and a white for a legendary angel creature. It's a 3/4.
It has flying.
Does it have another ability?
Sort of.
Right. Other creatures keyword. That was the word I was trying to. You and other creatures you control have hexproof. It also has an activate ability for 4 green, which is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. I find this card really interesting. I think Jadine Clamparans covered it in one of their articles in the last week as well about the kind of tempo gains you can sort of make with the card. It's a 4 toughness creature in a Glorybringer standard format, which is going to be the first knock on the card itself. It does give us a good mana sink for the potential deck that we were talking about earlier, but it itself doesn't really contribute to the game plan of tapping creatures with Song of Freyalise. So it's a weird one. I'm
very low on this card. I partly it's because it's the kind of card I don't particularly like playing the decks it goes in or whatever, and I struggle to evaluate those kind of cards in those decks. But I just don't understand why people are so excited about this card. It's a 4 mana sorcery speed creature that doesn't do anything when it comes into play. Even if you untap with it, you're not taking over the game like you can with like Ariel. I can understand how that card's exciting because like as soon as you untap with it, you're probably very close to winning the game. But his card, like, I just don't get it.
So a lot of people are also sticking it with Lyra Dawnbringer, and this is something I really don't understand because Shellai obviously wants you to go wide and play in all these big battle cruiser angels so that your new Baneslayer angel can pump your Shellai. Seems a bit odd to me.
So I kind of disagree. I think Shellai is like a weird card in that it's split. I think that the activated ability wants you to go wide. So you can put +1/+1 counters on all your creatures and get the most out of that. But the static ability, the everything has hexproof ability, that wants you to go tall.
Sure.
Because I'm not interested in making all my tokens hexproof. Nobody's fatal pushing my tokens.
Sure.
That's not a game plan I'm scared of.
Absolutely.
People are Vraska's contempting my Lyras. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of interested in playing it. Basically, my thing about Shalai is that I think that the hexproof stuff is more exciting than the put +1/+1 counters.
That's kind of gravy at that point.
Yeah, and I think that I'm much more interested in playing it in a deck where that matters. In like a tokens deck, it doesn't matter. You don't have anything else for them to use their removal on. They're just going to kill Shalai first anyway because he represents the biggest threat. Mm-hmm. I don't want my biggest threat to give everything else hexproof. That just reduces the misplays my opponents can make.
Absolutely.
So I'm more interested in putting him in a Lyra deck. I'm less interested in playing Lyra.
I think that's kind of my point of contention there.
She's Baneslayer Angel was cool. Mm-hmm. No denying that. But I don't think we live in Baneslayer Angel's world anymore. So the other 5-drops your opponent gets to play, they literally get to play the Scarab God. That card is absurd. Have you read it? It just keeps going. There's so many words on it, and all of them are better than Baneslayer Angel.
To be clear, for anyone who didn't play when Baneslayer Angel was around, let's just do Lyra Dawnbringer. So she's 3 white for a 5/5 legendary angel creature. She has first strike, lifelink, and flying, and other creatures you control, other angels you control, apologies, get +1/+1.
And lifelink.
And lifelink. Oh, yeah, okay. I forgot about that last bit of text. Okay, maybe I'm a bit more interested, but based on what you've said, I think that the card it sounds very sideboardy to me.
I think it will be excellent against mono red.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Nothing else.
That's my point. So I think it's like a good sideboard tool for the white deck, something that they've not really... like there's a large life-linking flying battle cruiser thing, something they've not had access to in a while.
I think basically my problem with all of these sort of Baneslayer effects is that we live in a world where people are playing cards that have more impact than Baneslayer Angel. Mm-hmm. And so to keep up, everyone has to play cards that can kill those cards very quickly.
Absolutely.
Everyone has to play 4 Vraska's Contempts. Mm-hmm. So if your plan is, I'm going to play my Baneslayer Angel, I'm going to kill him, you're going to be in a world where everyone is either playing something better than your Baneslayer Angel, like the Scarab God, or Hazoret, if we're being honest.
Sure.
Like, that card is quite impactful. Or they're playing things that kill your Baneslayer Angel because they have to.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is playing the Scarab God or things that are better.
Sure. And this is going back to the creatures in Standard at the moment, which either have to have a really, really good ETB effect, or like some kind of effect that when they enter the battlefield you get instant value. So if it does get killed, you're not behind. Basically, you kind of 2-for-1 your opponent to an extent, or 1.5 for 1, or like the Scarab God. When you untap with them, you just win.
For your expensive creatures.
Yeah, sure. For the expensive creatures.
Cheap creatures can still just be cheap.
Sure, absolutely. And when they're cheap and they do those things as well, then they're usually very, very good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thoughts on all of these kind of white-based decks. Well, green-based as well. Some of them are tokens-based. Some of them are kind of playing big battle cruiser things. The list that I'm brewing up at the moment, I kind of stuck somewhere in the middle with an identity crisis, and I think I'm inclined to agree with Nathaniel that Shalai's ability is mainly in the hexproof, and you really want to be playing these big impactful creatures that your Shalai is protecting rather than the pump ability, and the pump ability would just be a good mana sink at the point in the game when you have run out of things to do. The last card I want to talk about quickly before we move on to our limited stuff, which I'm not sure how much we'll be able to cover on that, is Vicious Offering. So Vicious Offering is an instant for 1 and a black. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. It has Kicker, which for the cost is to sacrifice a creature, and that target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. I want to talk about this over things like Cast Down, which is, again, a lot of people are talking about it. It seems a lot more of an obvious good removal spell. But Vicious Offering is a bit more interesting to me as a discussion point.
I mean, I agree. I think that so you can't just put it in any deck, because if you're not interested in sacrificing a creature ever, then you're not going to play that on Moment of Craving. So blue-black control is still going to play Moment of Craving, right?
Yes.
Whereas if you are... So I think we'll talk about it with like a champion in your Champion of Wits mid-range decks, because it lets you sacrifice a Champion of Wits sometimes, and the rest of the time it's Moment of Craving without the life gain, and like that's probably still pretty good. I'm not as high on it there. I think those decks are much more interested in Cast Down than they are.
Yes.
I agree. I think that being able to kill a Glorybringer with your 2-mana removal spell is much more impactful than sometimes being able to sacrifice your champion.
Which, for completeness, cast down is 1 black, instant, destroy target non-legendary creature.
Yes. Non-legendary is kind of a thing in Standard right now, in that like there are a lot of very good legendary creatures, but most of them wouldn't die to 2-mana destroy target creature anyway, so who cares?
Exactly.
This one does kill Glorybringer, which is a really big deal. But the Vicious Offering, I am excited for these sorts of tokensy decks because it gives you this very powerful option of it kills Hazoret. It doesn't totally kill the Scarab God, but it sort of does. If you're like ahead on board, you get to out-tempo them, which is one of the ways you beat the Scarab God. And it kills Glorybringer. And if you're already in the market to just have a bunch of creatures and go wide and sack them, like, I don't know, maybe there's a green-black aristocrat style deck with
or just
Slagfoot.
Or just in like white-black tokens. Like I can see them very easily replacing their Fateful Pushes with this, because it's a split card, Disfigure, Bone Splinters, kind of.
Yeah.
The -5/-5 isn't exactly Bone Splinters, but it's pretty close. It's arguably better in this format with Hazoret
Yes,
as well.
Definitely. Killing Hazoret is obviously like super key and something that you want to be doing, and that's exactly what I was going to say. These token-based strategies seem, really, really well positioned to exploit this spell. So I think that just about covers it for our standard first impressions. So now we've got a limited section, which Riley's going to take the lead on. He's picked out a few cards that he wants to talk about for the upcoming limited format, so both for sealed and draft, I imagine.
Yeah, I think we're going to look at the common removal that's in the set, because the last few sets have been very influenced by what is available there. I think the reason that Ixalan was very fast and dominated by these auras was the fact that the removal was like expensive and not capable of keeping up with the threats.
Yeah.
And we saw a shift back towards control decks being better with Rouse of Ixalan when all the spells got like some common removal and particularly cheap common removal.
Yeah.
So we'll do a quick run through of it and then we'll have a discussion about what it might do. So in white, there's 2 pieces of removal at common. They're both instants. We've got 4 in a white, Blessed Light, exile a creature or enchantment, and 1 in a white for Gideon's Reproach, which is deal 4 to an attacker or blocker. These are like kind of unexciting to me. Gideon's Reproach is like fine in your controlling decks, but it's not good in your aggressive decks because them getting the block is still like some amount of value out of it.
Yeah.
But it's can cover you against some amount of nonsense, ordered up creatures or whatever, and there are some powerful auras in this set. So I think it'll see some amount of play, but I'm not going to be pulled into white because there's no pacifism basically, which I think is one of the things that makes white really good at the moment.
Yeah, I'm always unexcited by like the 5-mana unconditional removal spells. They're the sort of thing you include in your sealed deck because like you don't have anything else, or that you like pick up at the tail end of a draft because you're like, I guess I need something.
There are some limited formats where they're very good.
Yes, and maybe this one is one of them, but I don't think the creatures are big enough for me to be that excited.
Yeah. Next we have in blue, so we have a bounce spell, Blink of an Eye, which is essentially Instant Aurora reprinted. So it's 1 in a blue for Disperse, return target non-land creature to its owner's hand.
Non-land permanent.
Sorry, non-land permanent to its owner's hand at instant speed. And then it has Kicker for 1 in a blue, which is you get to draw a card. It's going to be a good interactive spell that's going to be fine, I think, in almost any deck, because you can always draw the card into slower matchups and cover against the aura nonsense. And then we have Deep Freeze, which is 2 in a blue for an aura, and it makes the enchanted creature an 0/4 wall that loses all abilities, so it gains defender or loses any other abilities it has. And I think this card's actually like going to be pretty powerful in controlling blue decks. And it looks like there might be like a slow blue, almost mill archetype, or ones with like very large creatures. There's a very large uncommon creature. Uncommon legend for blue. It's an 8/8 for 8 that you can kick for 1 in the blue to bounce, to cast Whelming Wave, bounce on non-fishy things.
Non-big sea creatures.
Oh, Merfolk as well, they could.
Which are basically none in the set. Sure. So it's going to be, when you cast it for 10 mana, it's going to be returnal creatures.
Returnal creatures to their own hand.
And you get an 8/8, which is like very powerful. So this Deep Freeze could enable that archetype. I think this card's like pretty strong and not an effect we've really seen in blue before.
The interesting thing to me is, so it's kind of similar to a claustrophobia effect.
Kind of, but it also gives it no abilities.
Which is why it's so good.
Absolutely, it's definitely more exciting for some archetypes than claustrophobia is.
And also, like, if you're an aggressive deck, giving them an 0/4 wall might not be exactly what you're in the market for, which is what you touched on.
Yeah, so that's the thing to me that's interesting is I think both of these push slightly different options for blue. Like, if I'm playing the blue-red Wizards deck, I'm much more interested in Blink of an Eye than I am in Deep Freeze.
Yes.
Whereas if I'm playing, like, a blue-white, like, historic meal archetype, sign me up for Deep Freeze, and I'll play the Blink of an Eyes I have. Into the Road is still a good card,
Yeah.
but it's not as exciting because my game's going to go long and my opponent is going to replay that creature.
This format sounds like it's going to be so much fun.
So in black, we have 3 mana black for Eviscerate, which is a functional reprint of Impale, so sorcery speed, destroy a creature. We have an instant for a single black Fungal Infection, which is give a creature -1/-1 until end of turn and make a 1/1 sapling token. And we have Vicious Offering, which we've already talked about. I think this is actually quite a powerful suite of removal.
Yes.
Fungal Infection in particular is very good against aggressive decks. It's like at worst -2/-2 to an attacking creature. Not against
basically
attacking
destroy
creature.
target attacking creature with toughness 2 or less.
And there's some amount of time where it's going to be like it's going to remove 2 things. I've not done a ton of looking at the toughnesses in the set, but I don't think it'll be too hard to make this to trade for a card at worst, and occasionally it'll trade for 2 cards, and it's like absolutely insane.
Yeah, the memory is there aren't that many 1 toughness things. When I looked over the spoiler, there was mostly 2 toughness. There are a few tokens, and there's a couple of like flyers with 1 toughness, I think. Mostly it's in white that you'll find 1 toughness creatures. I think there is like a Blade of the Sixth Pride or a Devilthorn Fox, like a 2 mana 3/1.
Yeah, there is.
And there's a 1 mana 2/1. I think in a lot of other colors you won't find that many like X ones, but there are some tokens, and there are a lot of X2s that I am excited to kill with this if I'm more controlling.
It's also just, I mean, even if you're a sapling based deck that cares about it, just using a trick in combat and getting an extra, if you're on the aggressive and getting an extra body, just sounds tremendous.
And then we have in red Fiery Intervention, which is 4 in a red for a sorcery, deal 5 to a creature or destroy an artifact, which I think is going to be pretty mediocre but fine.
It's similar to Blessed Light to me.
Yeah, but definitely worse, but in that category. Radiating Lightning, which is 3 in red for an instant. It deals 3 to a player and 1 to each creature that player controls. This is going to be like a sideboard card against if there are lots of 1 toughness decks. Like if there is a sapling deck.
I think there definitely is a sapling deck. There is at common or uncommon. I think the 4 mana one that makes 3 saplings is uncommon. And I think the 2 mana one that makes 2 is common.
Yeah.
But there's certainly going to be, I think, a reasonable number of saplings or whatever they're called. Saplings.
Yeah.
1/1 doodahs floating around. And I think that this might be a good card against them.
And then we have Shivan Fire, which is the most exciting red common removal spell. It's an instant. It deals 2 to a creature, and then with Kicker, for 4 mana Kicker, it deals 4 instead, so it's Burst Lightning, it can't go to the face. And this is like an excellent spell. Like it's just
So 5 mana total when you kick it.
5 mana total when you kick it to deal 4 instant speed, which is not like an exciting card, but Fiery Impulse was always great. You're always going to play like 1 mana deal 2 to a creature, and the fact that it can still scale into the late game some amount.
Yeah, the fact that when you draw it and your opponent has a Sarah Angel in the late game, and you're not like, like when you draw a Shock, you're like, oh no, I hope my opponent is at 2, otherwise I die. But this, you're like, I will tap some more mana.
Do you lose though? That's the question.
I would lose. I would lose if I could.
Shivan Fire's got some good constructed implications as well. Obviously, we're talking about limited here, but I do think that it's good enough to see play there.
Maybe.
Potentially.
I'm more skeptical of that.
Okay.
I feel like if you want in for that, you're probably just in for Magma Spray more, but...
Potentially.
Yeah. And then green, we have a fight spell, Ancient Animus. It's an instant. It gives the creature on your side, if it's legendary, gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then it fights a creature your opponent controls. And we have Pierce the Sky, which is 1 in a green for an instant. Deal 7 to target creature with flying, which I really don't understand why they've not reprinted Plummet. I think it's because there's like a white damage prevention spell in this set. So
but even then it prevents 3 damage?
You can save your very large flyer from dying, but...
Well, you have the shield on it. You have the shield.
That prevents 2 damage.
Yeah, and then you play the white spell.
To prevent the next 3.
Yeah, and then they have to... And then it
doesn't you have to have a 3 toughness creature.
It doesn't save your Snapping Drake, of which there are a million. Yeah, I mean, I think that the instant speed fight spell is interesting because unlike in Ixalan, where a lot of your... so A, obviously it's better than Pounce already because it has the extra text. But B, in Ixalan, Pounce was always this weird card where you liked it in your dinosaur decks because frequently those are the biggest things on the battlefield. But your Merfolk deck didn't really want it because you very rarely were outsizing your opponent's creatures enough to make fighting them a good prospect.
Yeah.
Whereas green in this set outsizes people pretty hard.
And there's no tribal commitments. You're just going to be taking all the big green creatures regardless of what type of green deck you're drafting anyway.
You don't have to draft, like, you're not like, oh no, I'm a Baloth deck, I have to take Baloths. You're like, this is a good Baloth, I'm going to take this Baloth and put it with the rest of my Karvu.
Are there even that many Baloths in
There's like 2 Baloths.
2 Baloths, yeah.
Maybe 1. It's a good card,
It's a really good one.
Yeah, I think overall the fact that green, red, black, and blue all have a cheap interactive spell that you can cast at any time, and then white has one you can cast during combat, I think is going to give most colors enough protection against the powerful auras, which, for reference, there's a common aura that's blue for +1/+1 and flying. There's a black aura that is +2/+1 and menace.
Okay.
I forget the exact...
Isn't that red?
Not sure about that one.
There's a red one. There's 2 mana. It's just whatever giant spectacle, whatever it was from Kaladesh. That's 2 mana, +2/+1 and menace.
Yes.
I look forward to people playing that again.
Yeah. And then there's a white one, which is 3 and a white for a legendary aura on Sarah's wings, and it gives +1/+1 flying, vigilance, and lifelink,
And legendary.
something like that.
Creature becomes
And makes the creature legendary,
Which does matter for this set.
Yeah.
which will matter for this set. And someone is going to put it on their creature. And they have 2 of them in play. Did they have to sacrifice the other one? I assume they had to sacrifice the other one.
I
at
think
that point.
I have to sacrifice that one.
You have to sacrifice because it's the only one with a legend.
I was thinking
Yeah.
about this.
I have no idea, actually.
I don't know how that rules interaction works, but someone is going to have a terrible time.
Someone's gonna sack
doing this.
something.
Yes.
Tell you what, we'll clear that up and we'll stick it in the show notes. But that's it for the removal, and you're right. I think that it's, despite having these auras, which do seem really powerful.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention is that each color, I think, except for green, has a really excellent uncommon removal spell.
Yeah.
That is going to there are going to be very high picks, like about better than a lot of prayers.
Red has Wizard's Lightning. White has...
Well, red has Wizard's Lightning and the kicker
5
of 3
fire.
mana, deal 5, and then if you kick it for 9 total, deal 10, divided as you choose amongst anything, which is
you get
insane.
crazy Rolling Thunder.
And Wizard's Lightning, what's 3 mana Lightning Bolt, but if you have a
It's open
wizard,
fire or lightning bolts. If you have
Yes. White has Seal Away.
Yeah, right. Seal Away. Black has Cast Down.
Black
and
has
then-
Cast Down and a 4 mana sorcery speed exile creature.
Yeah,
which is
Oblivion-
fine.
Oblivion
But
Strike.
I guess blue. I don't think blue actually has anything. But
not that I run.
but the fact that the Mardu colors don't have a really powerful removal spell, I think, is going to mean that most decks can have access to that if they see it in the draft. So I think that should cover against a lot of the potential nonsense and lead to more regular games are limited.
Yeah, I think it's going to make for a really good
which
format.
I am excited for.
Definitely.
Yes. I'm also excited for Kicker. There's a little bit less of it in the set than I was thinking, but
Yeah, well, there's some exciting common creatures with Kicker, I think.
yes, I definitely agree with that, especially in green and some in red, I think.
White has a 2/3 for 2 and a white. You can kick for 2 and a white to make 2 1/1s additionally.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
pretty
good.
solid. Blue has a Windrake, 3 mana 2/2 flyer that you can kick for 4 additional to give 2+1/+1 counters.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it becomes
Like
a 4/4
Academy
flyer
Drake.
for 7.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
Academy
do
Drake.
think that's pretty impactful because there aren't. I was looking at the set and there's a lot of snapping drakes and there's Serra Angel, but there's nothing else that flies. I think there's also a 6 mana 4/3 in black. That's one of their uncommon legends. But once you hit 4 toughness as a flyer, you're actually quite big.
Yeah,
There's nothing else that really brawls with you in the air aside from Serra Angel, the other copies of this Windrake, and that black flyer.
Yep. Black has some weird cards for its kickers. It has a 1/1 with Menace. You can kick for free and it gets 2+1/+1 counters. And I actually think Hilljamp with Menace is probably a good card.
Yeah, I think that card's fine.
And the
Play
fact that it has
turn.
the fact that it has a fail case of being a 1/1 against aggressive decks is pretty good.
Yeah.
It also has a 2 mana 1/3 with kicker for 3 and a black. Each opponent discards 2 cards, which will depend on how the format shakes up. I think whether it sees play.
There's a couple of 1/3s that you can kick and they do something.
There's one in red as well that is the same. So it's 1 in red, and then for 3 in a red you get to return an instant or sorcery to your hand, which I think is
That's really nice.
reasonably good. Those cards are advanced by the fact that against decks where you don't interested in the mind rot or the regrowth on the instant or sorcery, you're probably more interested in a 1/3 blocker because you're probably getting playing against an aggressive deck, and then against the slower matchups you have some card advantage, which is nice. There's a powerful red haste creature, Keldon Overseer, 3/1 haste for 2 in a red, which is already close to playable.
Yeah, that's a good card.
Playable if you're aggressive enough. And then for 3 in a red, you get a Threaten as well, which is pretty good.
Creatures that threaten are very, very strong.
Yeah.
And I think
it creates sudden board swings.
I actually think the green kicker creatures are all very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
And
really insane.
they're going to pair with Llanowar Elves very well as well because you're going to have a few more mana sources in your green decks. So we've talked about Sapling Migration already, but that's going to be excellent and limited. 2/1/1s is already playable, and then 6 mana for 4/1/1s is also playable.
Good card.
Croton Druid, 2 and a green for 2 free, which is not exciting, but then Kicker for 4 and a green, you gain 10 life, which is a lot of life.
Yeah. I'm not normally in for life gain, but 10 life is so much.
It's a big chunk, and if you're in a kind of any kind of race matchup, then
if you feel like you have you don't even have to be racing. It's just if you feel like you have inevitability, then gaining 10 life makes you really you're very likely to draw your busted cards.
It gives you a lot of time.
Yeah.
And then we have Baloth Gorger, which is 2 green for 4/4.
I love this card.
And then Kicker for Fervor 4 gets 3 +1/+1 counters, so it's a 4/4 for 4 or a 7/7 for 8.
Yeah.
So just like a very
I'm really
good...
into 4/4s for 4 in this set. I think they outside a lot of the regular creatures.
Rumbling
and
Baloth.
I'm also into 7/7s because those also. I don't think there's anything bigger. Oh no, there's the blue uncommon. That's the biggest creature common or uncommon. I think.
The 8/8.
Yes, the 8/8.
The 8/8. But other than that, I don't think. I think
Well,
that's the only thing.
how are we counting Yargle?
Yargle doesn't
9
count.
power.
I don't count Yargle. I will lose to the Yargle deck that puts wings on the Yargle and kills me with Yargle.
Oh, that sounds kind of great.
I will probably lose to this deck. 100%. I will accept this. That every pre-release I go to, my opponent will go turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 something, turn 4 Yargle, turn 5
Turn 3 Yargle. Turn 4 is 5 mana. Sorry.
Yeah, it's 5
Turn
mana.
4 Yargle, turn 5 put the wings on it, make you dead, buddy. Didn't see that coming, did you? Why didn't you open more removal in your
I've got
sealed
it.
pool?
I've got it. Llanowar Elves into Power Stone Shard.
Oh, you're perfect.
Into Yargle plus... No, Yargle on then turn 3 and then attacking with it on turn 4. On Sarah's wings,
Yes,
obviously.
okay, on
10
Sarah's wings,
4,
obviously,
10 4
yeah.
Vigilant.
Yeah, so we can be...
With the lifelink as well? Oh my
we can
god.
be abs then.
Yeah.
10-4 Vigilant lifelink.
So, for anyone that's not clear, Yargle's kind of making waves in the MTG meme
He's
community.
he's making waves in the meme community as a 9/3 frog.
Spirit. Legendary creature, Frog Spirit. Yargle, Glutton of Urborg.
Yeah.
The art's also hilarious.
He is a 9/3 vanilla, but he is hilarious.
No abilities, just flavor text. So, back to Kicker.
Back to the cards that are relevant.
Yeah.
They're not called Yargle.
Kicker's a really fun mechanic. It's going to give you things to do with your mana later in the game, allow you to actually play the game if you flood.
It turns your land drops beyond land 6 into far more life cards
Absolutely.
than always normally.
And it's all really exciting because, we recently had a format with cycling, which allowed you to do things with your mana as well, which...
I love Direct Devastation.
Yeah, and
so much
Kicker's great, it's very, very simple and straightforward and everybody kind of gets it, but it's also just, it's going to make for really good games of Limited.
Yeah.
From a design perspective, Kicker's actually pretty bad, but at least it's fun. But it's too much. It's
Sure. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And from a game design perspective, it can make things a little bit
You don't
narrow.
want to make a kicker in your game, actually.
Sure.
Because you realise that, let's make this new mechanic. Oh, it's Kicker.
Yeah, everything is Kicker.
What about this new mechanic? Oh, it's Kicker. Oh, dear.
Especially once you introduce Kicker for non-mana costs.
Yes.
It's a Kicker cost.
For the purposes of this limited format, though, I think it's going to make for really good games, which I'm really excited about. Although Rivals of Ixalan was better than just Ixalan,
but Tetsamok was a rare.
Yeah, Texamot was a rare,
I
and
just won't forgive them for that.
that's fine.
We are also moving to the all large set draft formats now.
Yeah.
Which when they announced it, I was very excited for because they've been really crushing the large sets. At that time, we'd just come off
Kaladesh. Right?
Kaladesh, Triple Kaladesh was good. Before that, we had Shadows of Innistrad. We like Triple Shadows of Innistrad. Before that, we had Bath Zendikar, which is a bit worse.
A bit medium, yeah.
But a lot of the triple large that they've done very well up until then. Then they went on a run of the most 2 recent blocks, the large set, triple large set being bad, and then being saved by the small set.
Yeah.
Which suggests to me Wizards have gotten very good at making so one of their draft formats is excellent, and the other one's... And it's very hard to make the other one, which makes sense if you think about it. It's very hard. I think it's much easier to balance a single set than it is to balance 2 sets where part of the cards have to come from one set and the rest of the cards have to come from another set.
Definitely.
You can make one of those good, but it's very hard to make both of those good. Mm-hmm. So I think just moving to triple large sets of Confident Wizards can just get all these formats right.
Yeah, and get the design right.
A lot more good formats.
Get the balance right, have not weird unexpected things happen when the new set comes in, or have to be reliant on the smaller set. So that's all really good stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited for this format, for this limited format. I'm really excited for what Dominaria is going to do to Standard. I'm actually just really excited to get into Standard again. None of us have had any relevant Standard tournaments for a while now. We've either been away at GPs or they've just not been happening. So
there's just so many decks that look like they may be playable now.
Exactly.
It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah,
to see what
and
happens.
it's really interesting. So I'm really excited for Dominaria release. I'm also really excited for what's happening later today. So I think this
Something
is
happening today?
something is happening.
I know we're in this weird cottage in
I thought we were just on holiday.
Yeah, we're not just hanging.
So Holt's wedding. We're all getting either suited and booted or kilted and booted in the next hour or so.
Kilted and silted because we're on a beach.
We are actually on the beach.
Yeah.
That is true. I'm going to cut this short before your nonsense continues.
I don't know what silted means.
Nobody. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us this week. I really, really appreciate it. We should go through everybody's Twitter handles before we conclude the cast. So, Nathaniel?
My Twitter handle is @IronsideF. You can find me, and I will tweet more about things.
Yes.
I'm at CPT Scissors MTG.
Captain Scissors. And I am Danzeru, which is DANZERU. Please also check out murphysvault.com. I think we talked about this in the last episode. We're in the middle of sort of consolidating all the articles, making that easier to find. But we also have a WordPress site where the articles are currently being held. So we'll include both links in the show notes just so that you've got those. What good articles have we been doing recently? We've got a couple of new articles.
We've had a few stuff about Brawl and some
Yes.
Commander stuff. We just got some new writers recently who talk about more slightly casual formats and hoping a better variety of content.
Yeah, we've got Ian and Martin that have just joined the team.
And if you haven't read it yet, Holt's article series on getting better as a player was really
That was really good. He also wrote a really good article about playing Blue-Red Storm as a tempo deck.
Definitely.
Or
an inevitability
an inevitability prison deck, which actually is really interesting. And if you ever have asked yourself the question, what is tempo? Then Holt can maybe try and begin to answer that question for you.
But that's actually Holt's been on fire the last few months. So we'll put links to all of these articles. Please check them out. And if you're ever in Edinburgh, come by Murphy's Vault, come say hi. And there's casual Magic going on pretty much all the time. And we've got an event for every evening of the week almost.
And sometimes we play real Magic too. Casual Magic is actually very real and probably more real than the Magic we play, but I'm insecure.
Once again, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And see you on the next episode.